Good morning, my name is Blanca, and my master thesis is based on assessing cetacean occurrence using SoundTraps in offshore areas from the west coast of Kerry in Ireland. This will be the structure of my presentation. Irish waters are a hotspot for cetaceans in which 25 species occur throughout the year, and they're widely distributed along the Irish shelf edge. Particularly in southwestern coast areas, a great variety of both baleen whales and odontocetes occur during summer and autumn season. All cetaceans are protected under the Wildlife Act and the Habitats Directive within the exclusive economic zone, in which 25 species are under Annex 4 and 2 species are under Annex 2. So how do we target important areas? The most common methods used worldwide and in Irish waters have been boat and land-based surveys, but nowadays there's an increased usage of other techniques such as the static acoustic monitoring, which is basically the deployment of an acoustic device along with an hydrophone that record sounds underwater. These techniques are less expensive. They allow for monitoring offshore or less reachable areas. They give insight on non-light hours. They're a good and quick technique for presence-absence of the animals, and they're also not weather dependent. Cetaceans rely on sound for their survival. Especially odontocete sounds have been classified into 3 types. We first found whistles and burst pulses, which are most commonly used for social context, so to create group cohesion, create social bonds, maintain stability, or for individual recognition. And then a third one, the clicks, which are mainly used for echolocation, finding prey, and foraging. This is how the sounds would look in a spectrogram of frequency versus time. So this would be a burst pulse, the vertical lines would be the clicks, and this would be a whistle. Dolphin communication in terms of the signals produced and the parameters given by frequency and duration can give information or being influenced by several factors. Among them, we find the species producing the sound, the ambient noise surrounding, the presence or not of calves, the sex of the animals, how big the group size is, the anthropogenic noise, and the behavior that they are involved in. So why is this study important? Previous methodologies have been focusing using CPODs, which allows to identify dolphins and porpoises click trains. But the use of SoundTraps in this study not only allows to identify those sounds, but also to cover other non-echolocating sounds such as whistles and burst pulses and other cetacean sounds such as baleen whales. It is also important because the chosen locations are a bit more offshore, which are less studied areas, and they're close to nearby to SACs for harbor porpoises and a resident population of bottlenose dolphins. So the main goals of this study have been to identify and describe this presence in these 2 locations, to assess a possible influence from diel cycle and location in odontocete non-echolocating sounds, and has also allowed to identify vessel noise presence and its possible influence on odontocete communication. The study area was in the west coast of Kerry in 2 locations. The one on north was monitored during summer and the one in south was monitored during autumn. In each location, a sound trap was deployed at approximately 100 meters depth and was attached to 2 buoys and 2 weights to maintain the mooring stable at the seafloor. The sound trap recorded the first 10 minutes of every hour, and then for the retrieval, an acoustic release was used to detach the sound trap and the buoys and reach the surface. Then the WAV files or audio files extracted from the sound trap were introduced into the Raven Pro software, in which the sound detection was the first step. Odontocete presence was identified through the visuals of clicks, burst pulses, and whistles. Vessel noise was identified by a low frequency line on the spectrogram, and then background quality, so the background of the recording, was given in a scale from 1 to 4. This was done because in good quality recordings, such as 1, the signals could be better discriminated rather than in bad quality recordings. This would be a 4 quality. Then signals belonging to whistles and burst pulses were extracted and were also given a quality from 1 to 3, bad signals being broken signals or less visible signals, and very good basically being clear signals. Then, with the selection tools of Raven Pro, frequency and duration sunset and sunrise time, and the rest. Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
That's
Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
and the rest were distributed into day and night time. Our studio was used for... Hello?
Yeah, we did lose some of that. You could start that slide again.
This slide? Okay. So Odontocete and vessel noise presence was described first with a number of the recordings containing those sounds. Then our studio was used to account for Odontocete vocal activity with a number of vocalizations per recording. In here, all qualities were used and burst, pulses, and whistles were combined together. DLMs were performed in each location to assess diel cycle and vessel noise influence, and then a third one was performed between locations. Finally, on a third step, to assess signal parameters variation, only 2 and 3 quality vocalizations were used, and frequencies and duration parameters were extracted for each of the sound types. Then for each sound type, each location, and each covariate, a random subsample dataset was created, and based on the assumptions of normality and heterogeneity given by tests and QQ plots, different parametric and non-parametric tests were applied to each of the datasets. So how important are these areas for the finite species? They are important because odontocetes were present in 96% of the recordings. They were also present along all diel phases, which indicates the importance of using sound monitoring, which gives information about non-light hours. However, this presence was almost the same for all the diel phases, and this is due to how I considered odontocete presence in these recordings. So for example, recordings containing only 3 signals, I considered this presence odontocete presence, as well as, for example, recordings having more than 50 signals, and these both have clearly different information. Therefore, a different approach, such as a dolphin positive minute, should have been used in this case. Whistles and burst pulses parameters were found very similar and even identical in some of the parameters between locations. Given the spatial temporal separation that exists between both, this makes us think whether these areas are used by the same animals. Bottlenose dolphins and common dolphins are the most likely encountered species in these locations, and our mean high frequency values were found identical in other locations for bottlenose dolphins, but were found different to the resident population of bottlenose dolphins, meaning that if these species is present in this study, these sounds could belong a possible genetically distinct offshore population that less is known about it. However, duration and low frequency values in our study have also been reported in both species, meaning that both species could be present. When assessing influences in vocalization rate and whistle parameters, we found a lot of vocalizations in which more than half were whistles and the rest were burst pulses, which demonstrates the importance of using SoundTraps versus other methodologies such as CPODs. GLMs were significant for North Kerry in summer, where vocalizations increased, which could be associated to a group size situations in which animals gather in bigger groups during summer, and both species have been reported to increase their vocalizations when they are in bigger groups. It was also significant for diel phase in West Kerry, with an increase of diel phase, an increase of vocalizations during daytime and evening time, which could be associated to an important socializing context during those time phases. However, these results need to be carefully interpreted because they are linked to an issue in methodology due to the vocalizations extraction that I will mention later. MANOVA gave us significant results for diel phase, and non-parametric tests showed a peak that peak frequency was lower during morning compared to evening. This, as this was not influenced by vessel noise, could be due to a possible behavior, although other parameters such as the inflection points, which represent the complexity of the signal, could help on interpreting these results. But it also could be due to a change in the environment surrounding, in where dolphins change their frequencies in a noisier environment. However, this description of the background was not given by diel phase. Regarding the anthropogenic noise presence, vessel noise was prevalent along the whole monitoring period, which could be due to an increase in shipping noise in these areas towards Shannon Point Sport, but it was particularly higher in West Kerry, which could be associated to an increase in the whale watching season in those areas during autumn. It was also prevalent along all diel phases, and it is known that certain behaviors such as foraging, it happens at certain times of the day for definite species. Vessel noise has been reported to decrease its foraging time in both species. then these results suggest that we need to understand whether there could be long-term disturbance in these locations, as vessel noise can cause shifts in habitat use and temporary displacement. Therefore, continuous monitoring is recommended in these locations. Finally, whistle duration was found significant in both locations, but it was found to increase under vessel noise in North Kerry and decrease under vessel noise in West Kerry. Such opposite findings suggest that other factors, such as the distance of the animal to the boat, the number of boats, and even the presence of calves, can trigger the increase or the decrease of whistle duration. Whistle frequency was also found significant in these two parameters, which is confirmed by other studies who have reported shifts in the frequency parameters under similar situations. Therefore, this could represent a short-term disturbance, and visual observations are needed to understand how these changes are affecting the dolphins population. The main limitation of the study has been the use of vocalization rates, which is methodologically biased. This is due to the overlapping whistle scenarios, where in scenarios where I had a lot of whistles overlapping, I could not visually or clearly see them, so I could not extract them. Therefore, as I mentioned, a different approach, such as dolphin positive minute or whistle as hello.
Yeah, you was a bit of a breakup when you got to the dolphin positive minutes, but you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry for the internet. So I was saying that the description of the background noise per diaphase could have helped on the interpretation of the results, and also maybe the separation of whistles and burst pulses in a vocal activity. This is because burst pulses by themselves can give information on behavior. Been identify a high presence of dolphins in what could be possible important areas or transition zones used by commons and bottlenose dolphins. Social communication seems to be important at certain times of the day. However, an improved methodology or a different extraction should be used to complement these results. And then a prevalent vessel noise was found with a possible short-term disturbance in dolphin communication. As further research, I recommend to involve the 4 seasons in both locations to assess better the seasonality on the habitat use of the dolphins, as well as the location, to develop a sound click detector in the SoundTrap to imply about possible foraging behavior, to continue sound monitoring and visual observations in order to identify the species, population status, and behavioral states, which could help on conservation and management plans. And then last but not least, there were a lot of baleen whale sounds in my recordings, but I could not extract them due to time constraints. And these areas could be important for migrations and feeding grounds. I want to thank GMIT and the Irish Whale Dolphin Group, who have been contributing to cetacean studies for a long period. I want to enormously thank Joanne O'Brien, who literally rescued me from a struggling situation. I want to highlight that I wasn't supposed to be in this project. I started in Greece and some things went wrong, and she was there to offer me this topic, and it was not really prepared. We didn't know what we were going to do, but she helped me to start over and develop a thesis. And however, I feel like there's been a lot of rushing moments in my thesis that could be reflected on my work. I want to thank my friends, my IMBRSea closest friends who are listening, everyone who is listening right now, people from Ireland, and who have been there with me the whole time. To my friends back home who are always there when I come back, and to my family who has always been very supportive, my siblings, and my parents who are listening right now next to me. Thank you so much.